With regards to your question about the Chinese government, we are just not buying that this was a technical decision by a Hong Kong immigration official. This was a deliberate choice by the government to release a fugitive despite a valid arrest warrant, and that decision unquestionably has a negative impact on the U.S.-China relationship.
What
yes.
are the repercussions in U.S.-Chinese relations for this?
Well, I'm not going to speculate about the repercussions, but the Chinese have emphasized the importance of building mutual trust, Steve, as you know, and we think that they have dealt that effort a serious setback. If we cannot count on them to honor their legal extradition obligations, then there is a problem, and that is a point we are making to them very directly.
Wow, that was White House Press Secretary Jay Carney with some straight talk earlier today, lashing out at the Chinese government for refusing to return NSA leaker Edward Snowden to the U.S. before they let him flee Hong Kong and head to Moscow. And now Russia also appears to be ignoring the administration's request to send Snowden back. We say we believe he's in Russia now, and yet they're not turning him over. This just weeks after President Obama met with the leaders of both nations. And moments ago, we also heard from President Obama on this. I'll get to that in a minute. Joining me now, John Bolton, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations and a Fox News contributor, and Ralph Peters, who's the author of Hell or Richmond and a Fox News strategic analyst. I mean, I certainly was never a U.S. ambassador, Ambassador Bolton, but my diplomatic antenna tell me this is the equivalent of the double middle digit.
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, we're still in the middle of it, so we don't know exactly what the administration has done. But, you know, you convey messages in a lot of ways. One is the level of the person conveying it. Did President Obama call President Xi Jinping of China or President Putin of Russia to say, you know, this is very important to us? Did Secretary of State Kerry call his counterparts? Another is how strong the message is. Do they think we're just going through the motions, or was it made plain? And finally, what penalties are we prepared to impose? I think right now we might yet influence Moscow if we imposed a few penalties on Beijing to show that we're serious.
Well, here's what President Obama was specifically asked whether he had spoken with Mr. Putin, because Jay Carney refused to say whether there had been direct communications between the two. So the president was asked that. He didn't exactly answer it. This is the way he answered it moments ago.
What we know is that we're following all the appropriate legal channels and working with various other countries to make sure that rule of law is observed. And beyond that, I'll refer to the Justice Department that has been actively involved in the case. All right? Okay, thank you, guys.
Ralph, I want to pick up with that Reuters report. They say this completes the picture of a world less willing than ever to bend to U.S. prescriptions of right and wrong. Your thoughts?
Well, I think whether it's President Xi of China or especially President Putin, or for that matter, the Latin American authoritarian quasi-dictators in Ecuador, Venezuela, Cuba, they don't respect Obama, and they certainly don't fear him. Obama huffs and he puffs, but he never blows the house down. And with Edward Snowden still on the ground in Moscow, we should be pulling out all the stops to get him out of there before he goes to Ecuador or anywhere else. But Putin has really sized Obama up. Putin is a classic bully, the schoolyard bully. And Obama is the skinny little kid with the pile of books and the big glasses. And Putin just enjoys thumping the living daylights out of him. And Obama still wants to be friends. It's just amazing to me. But Obama, whatever you think of his domestic policies, his foreign policy has been a comprehensive disaster.
I mean, Ambassador, we just met with the leaders. I mean, President Obama just met with the leaders of these countries. I mean, the Chinese president was just here. You know, we just had this discussion, and we were going to have a fresh start. And then apparently we did call and say, could you not let Snowden leave? And they reportedly gave us the razzmatazz about how, well, your request doesn't include enough information for us to legally detain him. And that's despite the federal charges of espionage and theft you filed. Oh, whoops, there he goes. He's gone in Moscow. What does it tell you?
Well, one of the problems that Obama has is he thinks everything is a subject of litigation. How do you handle international terrorism? You unleash the FBI, you prosecute them in a federal district court. How do you handle this Snowden thing? Well, you file immigration papers in Hong Kong. Look, this question of Snowden has nothing to do with legal technicalities. This is a matter of raw power in politics, and it's unclear at this point that the administration has understood that. So that's why I think you have to come back to the question of consequences. What I would do right now would be to pull our ambassador back from Beijing and put a freeze on daily diplomatic activity, number one. And number two, I'd hit China where it would hurt them to make it clear how unhappy we are. I would lift permanently all travel restrictions on officials of the government of the Republic of China and Taiwan, the separate government that fled there when the communists took power in 1949. I think we should do that anyway, and I think it would send Beijing up the wall. That's the signal they need to see from the administration, or something like it. And if Russia sees that we're prepared to do that with respect to China, maybe they yet may come to their senses.
Well, because we had, that was, with all due respect to Mr. Carney, uncharacteristically tough talk.
Language is irrelevant here at this point. They've tried language with China. Language failed. Now they need to take action.
Mm-hmm. And so now we do believe that he's still in Russia. There had been all these reporters boarded a plane from Russia to Cuba because he had booked a plane ticket under the name of Edward Snowden, which, that may have been a tell that it probably wasn't likely to be him, given the circumstances he's in. But all these reporters jump on the plane, Ralph, and then took photos of the empty seat to show how they'd been duped. And so now we believe he's still in Russia. And the question is, what sort of, toe-to-toe, nose-to-nose face-off is our president now in with Mr. Putin over this NSA leaker guy?
Well, 3 points. First of all, I do hope all those journalists took their swimsuits with them to Havana. Second, there's a real long shot that we could trade convicted renegade Russian arms trader Viktor Bout, who's in a U.S. prison. The Russians want him back. That we could trade him for Snowden. It'd have to be, after a decent interval kind of thing. But that's frankly the only card we have with Russia, because Obama's already given away the farm, and he wants to give up more nukes virtually unilaterally. He hasn't said a boo about the Putin regime actually not only persecuting but killing journalists. So we actually have very little leverage with Russia because, again, as the ambassador said, this administration is an administration of words, of castles and palaces built of words. It does not understand hard power.
If they let him go out of Russia and he winds up in Ecuador, the general consensus seems to be it's over, because that's where Julian Assange of WikiLeaks is hiding out in some embassy, and we haven't been able to get him. And the question is, would Ecuador ever, even though there is an extradition treaty, it's like 80 years old or something like that. In any event, so the seems to be Russia's the stop point, and that's not resolved. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you, Megyn.